hello, I'm very glad to be here. It's been a long trip from Singapore. It's much cooler here, which is nice. Singapore has been tropical, you know. The reason why I'm standing here today is because I had two insights 8 years ago and 7 years ago. And I'll start off with these insights. The first one was I was working in Germany at the time in business intelligence. I was earning a pretty decent amount of money. But by the time I calculated the amount of taxes that had to be paid from my employer, by the time I received money I can actually spend in a store, about 75 to 80% of the money was gone. And despite these huge amounts of taxes, Germany is still having a budget deficit almost every year. And I thought that's something wrong with this. I ended up wanting to look at how things go in different countries. And I did 2 trips around the world, and I found a jurisdiction I really liked, which is Singapore. I ended up moving to Singapore, and I ended up working for the same employer out of Singapore. Due to the nature of my work, that was possible. And suddenly, I ended up keeping almost all of my money. I ended up earning 4 times more because I was a German citizen moving to Singapore, and so I was not subject to German taxes anymore. Singapore said, if you're earning your money in Germany, we don't care, we don't tax you. So I was legally not paying any tax. The lesson I learned out of this is we can actually choose a jurisdiction, and we ought to choose a jurisdiction which allows us to do what we want to do. In this case, my objective was not to pay so much taxes and have money for retirement. And that was insight number 1. Insight number 2 is, after a while, I ended up getting a job in Singapore working for a major German bank. My title was Senior Data Architect. I was building compliance systems, trading systems, and so on. The first thing they did is send me right back to Germany, but under Singaporean contract, so it was quite fine. And it helped me to get my PR in Singapore. And the timing of that was end of 2008. And as most of you probably know, end of 2008, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. And with Lehman Brothers going bankrupt, the whole financial system was freezing up, because suddenly bankers might no longer trust that their counterparties would actually fulfill their obligations. And our whole financial system is based on trust. If we lose trust, we don't have much of a financial system left. And I saw that sitting in the trading room. And I saw the panic which came out of that. And that gave me pause. And I thought, well, how can I take some of my wealth and make sure it's not going to disappear in some sort of systemic crisis? Because if the bailouts would not have happened in 2008, then we would have had a major, major problem in our financial system. We either would have had mass defaults, as defaults would go along the counterparty default chains, or we would have had some sort of bail-in, kind of like what happened in Cyprus, whereby if you own $400,000, you might be able to keep 50,000, and 350 will be used to bail out banks or something else. So that was insight number 2. How do we do this? And the question was, are we going to have this situation again? I believe we do, because the problem came from too much debt. We haven't really solved the problem. And are governments going to bail us out again, or are they not? And so I'd like to show you this graph, which shows the amount of debt which different governments have. We often hear the terms, oh, you know, $1 trillion. Well, most people don't know what $1 trillion is. Actually, it's very hard to picture. It's such a huge number. And if you like this chart, we have 3 posters outside. You can have those. What we did with this is we used to illustrate, if you take a pallet of $100 bills, that's about $100 million, it will reach to about here and in size. If we put that to scale, if you put that to scale, it's this little dot. If you take these pallets and you start stacking them up, you need about 10,000 of these pallets to make $1 trillion. So this is $1 trillion. And we put it next to Statue of Liberty and next to 747 Boeing, to give an idea of the scale. The really scary part, however, is that since 2008, all of this new debt was created. So the United States is adding more than $1 trillion in debt every year. How is that sustainable? It's not going to be sustainable. And the next time we have a financial crisis, there might not be the political will to do a bailout again. So how are we going to protect ourselves? What happened back in Frankfurt is physical gold and silver suddenly became very hard to obtain. And I saw people starting to buy it, and especially silver fell down to $9.50, it went down in price, and said, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to buy some silver. And this bullion store said, I'm only buying silver, I'm not selling anything to you. And I thought that was weird. Let me go to a proper store. So I went to somebody else. I was taught the same things. Banks did not have silver anymore. Gold was also hard to get. And I went to 12 different places throughout Frankfurt trying to get my silver bar. I finally got a 1 kg silver bar at the gift shop of the European Central Bank. I told the story to the director, and he said, I'll come back in 3 days, I'll give you a little bar. And I got my bar. But the moral of the story was, physical precious metals, not paper, but physical, does not have counterparty risk. It is implicitly valuable. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take physical precious metals, I'm putting it in a jurisdiction I feel is very trustworthy, and no matter what happens, I'll make sure that that wealth is protected. And that's where our company started. Everything we did because of these two realizations. So if you're the type of person who would agree that we're going to have some systemic events coming in our future due to the debt problems, the amount of leverage that we have in the system, and so on and so on. And if you want to do something about it, then we have built a solution which I believe will address these points. And I'll spend the rest of the presentation to explain how we did it, what type of risk we are addressing, and how we address it. First off, precious metals, as mentioned earlier, they've been a store of value throughout time and throughout different cultures. It's implicitly valuable, which means you can own it. By owning it, you remove counterparty risk. And it's a proven refuge in time of crisis. Look at Vietnam War, for example. It didn't matter if you had currency from the winning or the losing side, it was pretty much worthless. The Vietnamese know that you keep some money in gold, and if things go bad, no matter where you go, you can use it to restart their life. So it's the ultimate store of value, only if you have the physical stuff. And the type of things we want to protect ourselves against are systemic risks. And typically these are financial collapse due to counterparty risk, nationalizations. Governments have been nationalizing or confiscating gold throughout time. It's happened many times before. Or a loss of trust in a currency, which is just another name for hyperinflation. All of these things we'll want to protect ourselves against. Now, I created a system. I called it the Gregersen standard. As just a way of naming it, and to also indicate that I'm putting my name behind this. And the first type of risk is counterparty risk. It's a risk that your counterparty is going to default. That's the most important risk which we see, 2008 financial crisis. The other one, if you're storing physical, is the risk that bullion is stored properly, that it's not going to disappear, that it's indeed genuine bullion, and so on. The next one is jurisdictional risk. And these are the three key unique selling points which we have, which we've worked on, and which we made sure that we have a very strong solution about. The best way, I believe, to explain this is to make a scenario. The scenario is, say that we have a repeat of what happened in 2008. We have a major bank going bankrupt, and say that for whatever reason, bailouts are not coming in time. It might not be politically feasible to spend a lot more money, or it might just be delayed, and say that we have defaults occurring along, say, counterparty chains, and that we get to a situation where we're either going to have a bail-in, or we're going to have mass defaults. A lot of people are going to lose money in their account. And if that's the case, how do we make sure that you're not going to lose bullion, your wealth stored with bullion. And the first systemic thing we're going to do is we are going to not make it a liability. In other words, the whole financial system is based on IOUs. You give me money and I owe you something in return. If I go bankrupt, then too bad, I'm sorry, you cannot fulfill my requirement towards you, and that's called bankruptcy. However, the beauty of physical metal is, if we take this gold and we put it in a uniquely identified parcel, uniquely ID, then that can become property. So our approach is, we buy bullion inventory, pretty large amounts, we put it inside these parcels, and then we sell the physical parcel to you under Singapore law. So there's a transfer of ownership from us as a company to you. That means that bullion is not on our balance sheet, and we only act as an agent to store and insure that bullion for you, as well as provide liquidity if you want to sell it. Because of this, we eliminated the default risk. It could still be stolen, but it cannot be defaulted against because it's in your name. This is what a typical parcel looks like. Right now we're storing about 9,000 of these in our facility. We're storing about $110 million in gold and silver. And there's a tamper evidence seal to make sure nobody has been access to this. Most importantly, there's a unique property identifier. This is what's being sold to you, and this is what ensures that it's your property. Because it's your property, we cannot lease this out, we cannot double sell it to something else, it's there. The next question is this safe? How do you know that we are not going to run away with it or do something else with this money? And I always tell customers, you should ask people when you store gold, how do you know it's actually safe? And what we do is, you receive a photo of the actual unique parcels that you own, and we have a very good checking system of third parties. Bureau Veritas is a bullion inspection company approved by the LBMA, which comes 3 times per year, does random audits of different parcels, and creates a report that the bullion is indeed there. The report is available to everybody for download. And our auditors, which are PwC, do a full audit of every single parcel in the facilities. It takes 1 or 2 days, and the report is also made available. So you get the photo, you have a third-party audit that pretty much answers the question, is it really there? How do you know it was not sold to somebody else? In other words, if I sell this to person A, I might take that same parcel and resell it to somebody else. The reason that is not possible with us is because every parcel goes in what is called a parcel ownership list. It's a list which shows the unique ID of the parcel and the anonymous ID of the owner. And by doing this, and by sharing that list with every owner, it is impossible for us to double assign something, because every individual owner knows what parcel he owns, so it will become very evident that there's something wrong. Of course, our auditors are also checking these lists and so on. Secondly, because I sold you the property now, I'm putting myself into a much more stringent condition compared to if I just owe it to you, because it's your property. If I take the property and I sell it or I transfer it to somewhere without your permission, that's called theft in Singapore, because it's commercial law. And Singapore has a pretty solid legal system, so you wouldn't want to do so. In other words, I'm putting myself into a much more difficult situation in order to create trust and say my system is built to create trust, and to put the customer and myself, I'm storing my own bullion there as well, first. My question is, generally, how do you know that I'm not having some tungsten bars with a little bit of gold plating on top, and they're storing worthless metals instead of real gold or silver? Well, for the last 4 years, we have a materials engineer which we have on staff. We have a quality analyst technician who used to work at Intel, who works with us. And we developed a testing system of bullion. It involves X-ray spectrography. It involves ultrasound testing to look inside the bar, electrical conductivity testing, which is another way of looking inside bars, density test, which is the standard, and so on. If you have a system which is a tolerance database for each product to make sure it's authentic. Test results are associated with each parcel, and you can look up the test result online. Everything is being tracked. You have a USP-like system which tracks these parcels. Next question is, this probably is the most important one, what's preventing us from running away with the bullion? Or what happens if the bullion gets stolen? And that's where insurance comes in. And one thing you need to know about insurance, I don't know how many have ever stored bullion directly with a vault, but in this industry there is a saying, or there are oftentimes bullion is being sold with the understanding that there's all risk insurance. You need to understand all risk insurance has no meaning. All risk insurance is an insurance term, which means all risk is included unless excluded. So customers believe if you have all risk insurance, you don't have nothing to worry about. That's not the case. The most important thing for vaulting of gold is what's called mysterious disappearance. Very few vaults have this. And it's one of the reasons why we moved out for earlier vaults. I had a customer, I might just tell the story. The customer asked me, why did you move out of the private vault? I said, well, one of the reasons we built our own was because we want to have mysterious disappearance coverage. The customer said, what do you mean? Well, if the bullion is disappears mysteriously, there's no insurance coverage. And the customer pulled out his contract, 30-page contract, with the other vault and said, show me. I went to page 16, and I showed them right there. Yes, you have all risk insurance, but guess what? Mysterious disappearance is excluded. And the reason why mysterious disappearance is such a big deal is because if I have a fire, a theft, a building collapse, I need a police report to prove to the insurance company indeed something was stolen. Based on that, I can get my insurance claim. If I have an inside job, I need a police report again to do so. Mysterious disappearance covers everything without a police report. If I don't know how that bullion disappeared, it is covered. That covers our mistakes as well. Say I have 100 gold bars coming in. Say for whatever reason, we don't count these gold bars correctly. There are only 99. Yet I think it's 100. And we store it somewhere. And 2 months later, we go over and we see also only 99 bars. It's a case of mysterious disappearance. So it takes a lot of trust from an insurance company to give you that coverage. You have $100 million per incident coverage. And we have that coverage because I spent 3 years building a vaulting system with triple checks, vaulting and so on. I had insurance people come over, vault inspectors, they gave us the green lights. They said, okay, we trust you. We trust you with that. And because they trust us, that risk is taken away from our customers. So that's what mysterious disappearance is. And these factors make sure that I eliminated the risk of default and I minimized your storage risk to the point that there's almost no storage risk. Because I'm proving to you it's a real thing, it's there, and I have a fantastic insurance which covers anything might go wrong. This photo, by the way, is our storage facility in Singapore. These are 1,000 ounce bars. Each one of these pallets is around 900 kg. They get moved and slotted into their places. Everything is fully segregated. That brings us to the next point, jurisdiction. Now, some of you might know, some might not, but in 1933, April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt issued an executive order making gold ownership illegal. Now, this was not something that was debated by the Senate. This was a prerogative of the President. He did it probably in violation of the US Constitution, because US Constitution still stated only gold and silver is supposed to be money. But it went through, and it became law. And if you didn't turn in your gold in a short period of time, then that gold could be confiscated, and you could be fined twice the amount of value of your gold. There was an interesting case, the Josephitz case, which was actually a family living in Switzerland at the time. They had placed 20,000 gold coins in a safe deposit box in the US. Roosevelt then did his law, his executive order, A year later, the family came back to the US and they accessed the safe deposit box. When they did so, a bank employee went with them to check what's inside the box. They found the gold coins, they called the police, the coins were all confiscated, and the family was fined. And think about this, there's nothing fair about this. You're putting probably hard-earned money, you put it somewhere safe, and suddenly the law changes, and what was an asset now has become a huge liability. It's like having cocaine all of a sudden. So that's why it's so important that you choose your jurisdiction. And it doesn't just affect citizens of a certain country. Like the Joseph case shows, this was a Swiss citizen. He just happened to choose the wrong jurisdiction to store his bullion. Can that happen again? Well, most of our customers are Americans. They believe it can probably happen again because the US had so much debt. And if people were not to trust the US dollar anymore at some point, there's a credible chance that this might repeat itself. And so where do you put your gold? Well, I'm a big fan of Singapore, and I believe Singapore would be the safest place for your gold for the following reasons. A, it's a very wealthy country. You want to put your gold with somebody who has a lot to lose, not somebody who has a lot of debt. And it's a rule of law country. From a foreign policy point of view, it sits between China and the US. Singapore never allies itself with anybody. It has very much a Swiss-like foreign policy, which means it stays neutral. And most importantly, it has no natural resources. It's completely dependent on people trusting Singapore. If Singapore ever were to lose the trust of investors, if they were to turn gold over to some foreign jurisdiction, it's like committing economic suicide. Lee Kuan Yew, the Prime Minister of Singapore, he summed up Singapore with confidence. They can never lose that confidence. That's why it is a strong jurisdiction to store your gold. Singapore also has a strong military. It's quite surprising. It's this little state, it's kind of like a city basically, a well-sized city, but it can muster up to 950,000 troops. That's a 2.5-year military service. Singapore's military bases in the US, for other places, in Taiwan, in Australia, in India, many other places. So it's a well-defended place. The military budget is twice that of Malaysia, for example. So it's not a place which is going to be run over. So assuming you see it a similar way and you believe that Singapore is a safe place, then the next point you have to think about is, who are you going to store it with? Because if you're storing it with a US-based company in Singapore, you might as well not bother. If you're a US-based company and you're going to be subject to US law, if the US were to nationalize gold, then what is a company in that situation going to do? Well, if you look at the force majeure clause of storage contracts, it will say very clearly that any governmental action by any government anywhere in the world is going to be covered by force majeure, and therefore it's already set up so there's not much you can do. So you would want to go with a local company, not with a global company, because it's the only way to reduce your jurisdictional exposure. And that's something over the last 7 years I've been very, very careful to limit. We're a Singaporean company, and therefore we only have Singapore jurisdiction. And we made sure we don't have much exposure anywhere else. We're still accepting US dollars as a form of payment, but I don't have to. I can use Chinese yuan, I can use Singapore dollars, I can use something else. And it's not a matter of hiding money, it's a matter of making sure that when systemic risk happens, when things become really bad, and when governments might resort to nationalizing gold, your gold is safe. And I don't have to make a choice. Do I have to follow US law or not? I'm just following Singapore law. And any request going to Singapore about nationalization of gold is going to die, so it's not going to be nationalized. So we only recognize Singapore authorities. Our contract is actually structured so it's illegal for us to release information or transfer bullion out of the country because it's private property, among other things. And we are a single counterparty. We used to outsource, just about every other bullion dealer does. But outsourcing means not being able to have these sort of protections. So we invested some money to build our own vault, be able to offer you all these other securities like mysterious disappearance and so on. And we're not a financial institution in the Singapore law. So we have very limited reporting that we have to do. As far as storage, there are two ways you can store. You can either store on a segregated parcel basis, like I was showing, or you can get a safe deposit box. If a nationalization happens, your wealth will be unaffected. So that's what this is basically all about. This is one of our main doors going to the Silver Vault, by the way, 2.5 tons. And our logo, is the shield. It's the three aspects I was talking about. Default risk, which we're basically eliminating by giving you segregated ownership of your bullion and not having a pooled account, such as fully allocated systems and so on. They're all pooled accounts. So we have segregated ownership, which eliminates this risk. Storage risk, we talked about earlier. Most importantly is the mysterious disappearance coverage. And from a jurisdictional point of view, we are just in Singapore. These three things is what I was defining as the Gregersen standard. You take anything away here, and it becomes a suboptimal standard. It's like a puzzle piece. By having these pieces in place, you have a very strong storage solutions. The next part is a little house here, storage facility. We call it the safe house. The facility is fully owned and operated by us. It's ISO 9001 certified. It can store 600 tons of silver. So that's more than 1% of world known supplies of silver. It can store 30 tons of gold. It has an integrated testing lab to test the bullion. There's auxiliary Singapore police, which provides the security. It has a hardened IT system, which is offline. And it's recognized by Singapore government as a world-class facility. We build it because to provide fully segregated storage, mysterious disappearance, and to, most importantly, to eliminate the middleman, eliminate the investment exposure. I'll show you a quick video of this. It's a 2-minute video, so you have an idea what it looks like. Everything we do is physical. We do no paper. Our safe deposit is a little bit different. Safe deposit are stored inside the vault. If you want to access them, we bring the box to you inside your own private channel. But the small ones, also are large boxes, which hold 205 kg, which are quite optimal for silver. The 2.5 ton door, which leads into the silver vault. You see these pallets, each one of them are custom-made pallet cages. They hold 900 kg of silver. These are safe deposit boxes. It's also going to be stored. This is our gold vault. It's a vault inside a vault. It's about a foot thick composite metal vault. And also gold goes into these safe deposits like boxes. It's the most efficient way to store it. This is some of the testing. This is X-ray spectrography. It tells you what the surface of a metal is. This is ultrasound, which we use to look inside the barrel. This is how we package the bullion. We have 55 cameras to make sure everything is being taken care of, controlled. This is how we stack the pallet cages inside. And as mentioned before, all the information is held locally. We're located 2 minutes from our main police station. We're recognized as a point of interest for Singapore police, which means they're doing patrols next to us during holidays. And of course we have this amazing insurance. So everything we did goes back towards creating as safe a storage option as possible, way beyond everything else I've seen so far. So that's the greatest we've done it. A few words, I think I'm getting a bit short on time, about us as a company. We're about 15 people right now. There's a subset of us. You might see Virgil here. He's standing right over here. He's the director of Silver Bullion, just as I am. You can ask questions to us. Please come. We have a stand over here. As a company, we sold around $210 million worth of gold and silver since we started. We started in 2009. We own 200,000 ounces of silver itself. Most importantly, we have no debt. I put my money into this company, and I believe in being around for the very long term. We can operate for 10 years without sales, so it's very, very strong. And we've been working quite closely with the Singapore government. We're an SBMA member. We've been training Singapore custom guards on recognizing which bullion is tax-free, which one is not. And the company is mostly owned by myself. I have over 60% of the shares, so I can make sure the direction stays consistent. I also believe in having our employees be owners, which is a way of really reducing turnover and making people feel that they are part of something. We are ranked 33rd most enterprising company in Singapore by KPMG, non-public. Our financial auditors are PwC and Bureau Veritas for the bullion inspections. As far as our services, we can buy and sell bullion. We have done over 5.5 million ounces, which is quite a lot. Storage services, either safe deposit boxes or segregated storage. We authenticate bullion, and we have what's called P2P collateralization of loans, which I'll speak in a little bit more soon. You don't have to buy bullion from us. If you're storing bullion somewhere else, you can transfer it over to us. And if you transfer it, you can choose to have it put into safe deposit boxes, which is the most private option, or you can put it into authenticated segregated storage, which allows you to sell it at any point in time or collateralize it. About our P2P loans, it's something we started 4 months ago. I've worked on this project for 2.5 years. What we're basically doing is, if you're a customer and you're storing, say, $100,000 worth of gold, and you would like to take a loan out, you can get a loan of up to 50% of the value of your gold or silver. So you can get a loan for $50,000, and you take that loan from another customer. There's no bank involved. That's why it's called P2P. Now, we act as a middleman, sort of an escrow. You transfer the money to us, we transfer it to the person taking the loan. The interest rate is determined between the customers themselves. If you're a borrower, for example, you can post that you want to have a 12-month loan and you're offering 6%. As a lender, you might say a 12-month USD loan, you're willing to give that at 8%. You can see each other's positions. You might say as a borrower, okay, I'm willing to pay 7%. The lender might then accept 7%, and hence the two customers decide to lend at 7%. We basically create an exchange outside the financial system. And the interest rate will vary. Right now, we are having too many lenders. We don't have enough borrowers. The system is very, very safe. You can only lend 50% of the value of your bullion. And if it ever goes below 110%, then we liquidate the position. There's a margin call at 125, which means it's very, very safe for the lender. And keep in mind, the collateral is with us. It's insured. It's got all the protections I mentioned earlier. We take 0.5% from whatever interest is being paid from the lender and the borrower side. That's the fee we're getting out of it. When we started off, loans were going through at 6.5%. Then we had too many lenders coming in, and it went down to 3%. The system works as it should. How would I know what the interest rate is supposed to be? I let the market basically decide. Later on, we had some borrowers coming in which got loans as high as $1 million, and interest rate went back up to 5%. Right now, it's starting to fall again. You can see every transaction which happens online on our website, and you can participate in it. Unfortunately, the strength of our system is that it's very safe. That's also a downside, because in order to borrow, you have to have a lot of gold. You have to be rich to borrow. So it limits the number of people who want to borrow. But if you have gold somewhere, you transfer it to us, you can use it as collateralization. we authenticate it. So we know whether it's real gold or not. If it's not real, we'll return it back. So to sum all of this up, I believe in challenging the status quo. I think the industry could do a lot better. I think there are a lot of things which are not transparent. And I decided to start from first principles, to start a tabula rasa, a fresh line, and build the best system I could with the background I have in software engineering, financial transaction building. And the way we protect you is by giving you ownership, not an IOU, but ownership of precious metals, stored in a very, very safe manner and transparent manner, and put it in what I consider the safest jurisdiction for your gold and silver. The whole idea is, no matter what happens, if you put 10 or 15% of your assets there, that money is going to be safe, no matter what happens. And that's our value proposition. The people who store with us, they don't look at it as much as an investment, I say look at it as a form of systemic insurance.